time for two more questions, which I see standing here, so please.
So my question has to do with if someone has an IgE-mediated immune response that is very severe, so what a food allergy, so what can be done to modulate the response other than avoidance? And this has a very practical application because I don't go to a restaurant with my wife and be without an EpiPen because of shellfish allergy. So is there anything that can be done to modulate it?
So right now, unfortunately, the answer is no. I mean, the standard of care is avoidance and an action plan, including having an epinephrine auto-injector. There is a lot, as you may know, of interest and research going on, including here at Mass General, looking at something called oral immunotherapy or other forms of immunotherapy. There's efforts to looking at epicutaneous exposure as well. The concept there is very similar to allergen immunotherapy applied to environmental allergies. It's more challenging in the case of food allergies because for a variety of reasons people tend to be more exquisitely sensitive, but the concept is the same, and the attempt is by slowly exposing to the antigen, building that up over time to try to induce tolerance. This is a very poor 19th century kind of frankly embarrassing treatment to have to offer for patients. There's a lot of hope that by much more, using applied immunology, what we understand about the qualitative nature of the immune response that leads to allergy and how that might be balanced by a tolerance response or a Th1 response, or that we could direct the immune response to the antigen intelligently and be more successful. But we're really still learning some of those fundamentals. Is it really, there are some interesting and important differences between IgE-mediated allergy, where you have long maintenance of immune memory in the absence of exposure to the antigen, or at least very trace exposure only to the antigen, as opposed to, say, for example, chronic inflammatory diseases, whether autoimmune or something like celiac disease before the antigen is avoided. So understanding what is that switch and what we need to induce is the next step leading us to more rational immunotherapy.
Okay, I just have a quick follow-up question. And in response to that, I myself have not had shellfish for a long time, but now I have developed a sensitivity to shellfish. So I'm trying to wonder, why has that happened? Because, I mean, for somebody who had never had any allergy to it, to develop a sensitivity to it is kind of surprising. And the follow-up thing is, do I introduce myself to more shellfish in an immunotherapy response, as you mentioned, or do I avoid it completely to avoid getting an IgE-mediated, and I drop dead in a restaurant?
So
which is it?
It sounds like for you, not knowing the details, obviously, of your case, but that ship has sailed for you, and you should not try to treat yourself. Now, it is interesting to note that among the things that adults have new onset IgE-mediated food allergy to are nuts and shellfish, foods that are, for most of us, less regularly consumed. We also know that, for example, among children who have evidence of positive IgE but are actively ingesting the food, that if they subsequently begin avoiding it, that may be a setup for actually new onset clinical hypersensitivity. Furthermore, people, for example, who pass a food challenge, they have evidence of making an allergic immune response, but they prove to be clinically tolerant. We advise them to actively eat that antigen. But they are not allergic clinically at that point. And it's thought that the act of regular ingestion does help to reinforce tolerance. But once you have a diagnosed allergy, outside of a research protocol, I do not recommend ingestion.
One last question.
That's on tape, right?
If humanity had never moved, if there had been no demographic shifts, and we all ate what indigenous people would eat around them, would we be as likely to have allergies today?
I mean, the incidence would be lower, significantly lower.
Thank you.
We'd be dying of a lot of other things, so.
Denny, could I just want to point out, because there will probably be some opportunity for informal questions. There are two people that came with me from our group, Lisa Steeb, who is our head nurse in the Food Allergy Center, and Joshua Holowinski, who is one of the research nutritionist dietitians, and I invite you, if you have other questions, to engage them as well.
Thank you very much. I want to thank our two, yes, I do think both elegant and eloquent speakers, and I want to thank the organizers. This is a wonderful opportunity, and I'll turn it back over to Louisa, and you want to introduce?
I do. I'm going to make a little transition to the fun part of the evening. Not that you gentlemen were not fun. It's very rare that I think that a whole conversation that basically has a high, if we did the cloud count, the word diarrhea a lot of time would not be fun. But I wanted to introduce you to Richard Vallanti, who is the chef of all the chefs of Legal Seafood. And I wanted him, making the transition to the reception, just to speak a little bit about how a chef thinks about managing diners who come in with food allergies, and how a diner could perhaps be more efficient about getting a meal that they actually can safely consume. Rich?
Thank you. Good evening. That's a lot of pressure. I'm the fun part of this seminar. I feel like I have to tell a joke or something. But from the chef's perspective, obviously, it's interesting. I was telling this story the other day. I've been in this business for about 30 years. And when we used to have gatherings like this, I remember we would get together with the servers, and we'd talk about the pre-meal and what we were doing that evening. And over the years, we never talked about allergies. We never talked about what was in the food in the sense of if there were nuts or if there was wheat or if there were things that people should be aware of. And over the last 5 years, I went to one of these events, and the first thing we did at a pre-meal was talk about allergens and talk about what was in the food exactly, what people should be aware of. And so my point is that over the last few years, it's been extremely heightened for us in the restaurant industry and the food industry. And you've seen that through different regulations and through different things that has been put on this industry. And for good reason. And we continue to see the growth of people being concerned about the allergens in the food. And so from a restaurant perspective, we need to stop and think about how we handle this. And it's a very serious matter. And so over the last 5 to 8 years, we've really had a lot of training behind this. And what does that mean in a restaurant that's, as a lot of people refer to it, as somewhat controlled chaos? There's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of requests. There's a lot of people coming and going. Things are happening very, very fast. And so it's important for us in our industry and for Legal Seafoods especially, is the minute that you come in as a guest, it's important for you to let us know if there are any allergy concerns, any food sensitivities. That way we can get the management team involved. Once we get them involved, there's a process that has to take place, because remember, there's people in the kitchen that don't even know, haven't seen you, haven't heard the information yet. So it's important for us, for a manager to get to the table. That manager will run that to the kitchen, and everything gets flagged. And so it's important for us to follow the whole process. We actually have it mandatory that a manager delivers the food as well, so that there's no skip in that whole process. The other thing that we've added to this is something visual. We thought it would be very important that, when things are busy and food's being moved about and brought out to the tables, we thought a visual would really help, because you're moving around in the kitchen so much and you're moving around in the front of the house. So what we do is, if there's a food sensitivity or any allergy, we double plate it. So every time you see that there's a double plate there, you know that that's something that you have to be overly sensitive with. So the important piece for me that I wanted to convey to you is, when you come in, you really should convey the sensitivity, how serious it is, and just let the staff know so that they can walk this and shepherd this all through for you. And it's important that we find out about it early enough so that we can cater to your needs, and that's very, very important as well. Because for us, it's important for you to have confidence in us. And there's nothing that are more prouder moments for us than when we have people that have seafood allergies or shellfish allergies that can actually come into Legal Seafoods and feel confident. And we have had people that do that. And it sounds odd, but we've had people come in and feel comfortable enough to order things off the menu even though they have a shellfish allergy. And so it's just important to work together. Let the staff know what it's about, what your needs are, and rely on us for our capabilities and our professionalism to take care of you.
Truly, tell them right away. I can tell you. I want to thank Dr. Ausiello, because it all started with him, Dr. Schreffler, and Dr. Ramnik, Xavier.